Hello, listeners. The not-so-giant women are here. And we are not yet crying, but maybe we will be as soon as we are here today to watch and discuss this cry for help thing. So
you may end up crying for help.
I have a really hard time predicting whether I'm going to cry at episodes that have made me cry. So, I mean, I could cry at Onion Trade and it'll just suddenly surprise me, you know? So I don't know. I don't have any way to predict how I'll react, even if I know what's going to happen. So.
Speaking of everyone, Ivy made me some Onion fan art for my birthday, and now it's my work desktop wallpaper.
He was stealing a sack full of diamonds.
Diamonds and assorted precious rocks, if one wants to avoid using the term gems.
Yes.
Though if that is a sack of actual gems, this is saying far, far more about him again.
Oh, Onion. Well, those can also make you cry. Maybe that's what made me cry for Onion Trade.
Psychosomatic. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you wanted to float any ideas about who's crying and why, but if you don't, we could just find out.
Let's just find out.
All right.
I can't think of one.
All right. Well, let's do it. Ugh. Woof.
We are the crystal gems. We'll always save the day.
It sure would be nice if things worked out the way they do in cartoons.
Yeah, it would.
Oh, that's some heavy business there.
Indeed.
Right. In terms of story, which I'm about to dive into, actually pretty straightforward. Steve and Amethyst are watching Crying Breakfast Friends, or they're trying to, except the signal on the TV gets interrupted by an image of Peridot, which is basically her SOS to Yellow Diamond, saying that I lost my ship and I lost my Jasper and come help me. And they figure that she must have somehow repaired the array. You kind of wave over that somehow. Repaired the communication array that we smashed up earlier in Coach Steven.
Yeah.
And so they journey there via Lion Portal because the warp is still smashed up from that episode. Observe the problem. Amethyst is all, we're going to have to form Sugilite again. And Garnet's like, nuh-uh, that went really badly. Instead, Garnet's going to merge with Pearl and form Sardonyx, who I fell a little bit in love with straight away. Sardonyx being this kind of MC come music hall host come ringmaster personality.
Oh, God.
Very ebullient, and while not quite the sheer blunt instrument that Sugilite is, she does have what it takes to destroy the communications array. However, next thing you know, back home they're trying to watch CBF again, and oh no, signal interruption. So it's back out there, Sardonyx all over again, and smash up the communications array. Steven and Amethyst figure that if Peridot is keep getting out there and repairing it, maybe they can camp out and catch her in the act. They do so. They think they've come up nothing, except someone does approach in Peridot's escape pod, which they thought was safely back at the temple, and repairs the array, sort of Green Lanterning the pieces back into position. But when the repair emerges from the pod, it is not Peridot, it is Pearl. Without alerting Pearl, they retreat back to the treehouse and, like, what are we going to do about this? While this be happening, the Amethyst, who has already sung a song about her own low self-esteem, has this sinking familiarity about the whole affair. Before anyone can turn into Sardonyx and smash up the tower again, Steven and Amethyst spill the beans on Pearl and say, look, it's been Pearl doing it. And Pearl basically is like, yeah, because I like fusing with you, Garnet, and forming Sardonyx so much. Amethyst tries to explain / justify with, Garnet, you're so strong that fusing with you makes us tiny Pearl and Amethyst people feel more strong that we never feel. Garnet's like, basically, yeah, this isn't a game, I'm not a toy, is incredibly angry period, especially at Pearl for basically using her for kicks just and creating false crises that they need to fuse for.
Mm-hmm.
So much so that they don't form Sardonyx again. They risk another trip as Sugilite, which I guess they've managed to talk her apart this time, because once Sugilite's done her thing, everyone's safely separate back at the house, except Garnet and Pearl are still very upset, still very much not talking to each other. Amethyst and Steven wish that things could work out the way they do in cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
And Steven turns off his screen and ours.
Yeah. Did we even get a star? I forget.
No, we get a TV powering down thing.
Oh, wow. So that's a change of tone right there.
Yeah. So,
Oh, my goodness. What an episode. My God.
It's not really a done in one, this one.
No.
Kind of assuming we're going to pick up on this. It wouldn't be like this show just to have everyone nice to each other without so much as mentioning it next week.
Right. Like in a lot of other cartoons, like Steven's example of crying breakfast friends, something will happen and everything's okay the next time the theme music starts.
And they didn't learn a lesson and resolve why this was a bad thing by the end of the episode in this one. Well, we learned pretty clearly why it was a bad thing, but that everyone already knew that. So there was no time to learn a lesson about selfishness.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of stuff to unpack about this one, but you know what I really want to know first is I just want to hear what you have to say about Sardonyx.
I freaking love Sardonyx, much as at least one of her fusings was under false pretenses.
Yeah.
A footnote, Pearl does say the first time that the tower went up that it was Peridot, which is feasible because someone must have recorded the Peridot message.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like Pearl would risk sending a message back to Homeworld just in case it was time to merge into Sardonyx.
Right. And notably, it was Garnet's suggestion at this point.
Mm.
So she was so touched to be chosen, just her big old eyes filling up with tears, and she's just vibrating and she's so happy.
But Sardonyx, I love this sort of showwoman personality. Constantly talking like she's a bit like a classical burlesque host in some ways. Just constantly bouncing from topic to topic and being tongue-in-cheek and bantery about things.
Yeah. Just on stage, owning it.
And she's got a little tuxedo top, which doesn't really come from either of them, but suits her.
Yeah, where does that come from, huh?
It's her personality as sort of an old-school presenter.
Yeah.
If she can form a hammer, getting one for as big as herself as well.
Yeah. That's such a goofy-looking hammer, too. It's funny.
Yeah, I have no trouble saying that of the non-regular fusion so far, Sardonyx, who is not very sardonic at all, is easily my favorite.
Yeah, there were, I guess, a lot of mixed reactions to her because, I mean, by the time in the fandom, by the time we get to episode 63 and the Garnet and Pearl fusion is the one we haven't seen, there had been a lot of fan art and a lot of speculation, and almost everybody kind of assumed that their fusion would be, first of all, a lot more stoic, a lot more obviously Garnet, but she's corny and goofy. And it's like, well, now that you see her, it makes complete sense. But a lot of people expected her to be a little more reserved. And I love what they did with Sardonyx, that they made her like, what if someone like Pearl, who craves that kind of attention but doesn't have the self-esteem to chase it, had Garnet's confidence? She would turn into that. Of course she would.
And we've speculated before, and what has never been said in so many words, the fusion's personalities are a mix of rebalancing of traits, not necessarily exactly half one and half the other too.
That's right. Although I guess some people expected it to be more like Garnet would outweigh Pearl because any fusion with her would be 2/3 Garnet. But it kind of isn't, because Garnet, she's a fusion herself, but she's still herself.
Yeah, it does seem from when we've seen Garnet fuse with someone else that even though she's a fusion, she still only counts as like one in the equation.
Right. At this point, you don't really have a whole lot of context to know a whole lot about Ruby and Sapphire, but just based on context, it seems way more like Sardonyx comes across as a fusion of Garnet and Pearl, not of Pearl, Ruby, and Sapphire.
Well, also notably, every time we've seen Garnet fuse with someone, it's been as Garnet. We've not seen Ruby and Sapphire and, say, Pearl fuse.
That's right.
Even though they are the components, they're already Garnet when they fuse.
Right. And I mean, I know it would have been a spoiler if they had done this otherwise, but when we had Alexandrite fighting with herself, and you start hearing the different voices come out of Alexandrite. You heard Garnet's voice, not mysterious other voices inside of her. So it's like she was sort of cohesive inside of that.
Yeah, so it seems from what we've seen so far, because ultimately we have only seen a handful of fusions in terms of raw numbers, but it seems that at least in Garnet's case, fusion of a fusion goes down one layer, as it were.
Yeah, it's like she's already combined and then she is contributing that combination. So even though if Pearl were to dance around with little Ruby and Sapphire, they would still become Sardonyx. It still is, Garnet is the one that she spends time with, the person that she knows.
Yeah, and so, as they've said, it's a relationship, and Pearl's probably got a lot less relationship with Ruby and Sapphire as individuals.
Right, because they're like never apart unless there's a crisis. So anyway, they seem like definitely Pearl is thinking of when she's fusing with Garnet, she's fusing with Garnet, and all of her feelings about Garnet feed into what becomes the greatness of Sardonyx. So, whereas I guess for Garnet, it's probably like we talked about back when we discussed the Sugilite fusion, it's like she's so reserved typically, and both Amethyst and Pearl are much more demonstrative with their emotions, and they can be silly and they can be emotional. And so she can have a big drama fest here as Sardonyx, and Garnet would never do that, but she gets to be part of it.
Well, we've seen that Garnet has quite strong emotions. She just doesn't necessarily display them in the manner that others do. And that Pearl definitely displays hers, although how deep they've run at various times, of course, is varied for her as is for anyone. But it means you've got Garnet's deep emotions, Pearl's willingness to express them as at least two of the ingredients there.
Yeah. And she told some nerdy jokes.
Yep.
It's really funny. And she was telling very silly jokes. I could just imagine her and Steven sitting around like telling cat jokes, like in cat fingers. And they would just go back and forth.
Oh, they'd still be there.
They'd still be. And when she appeared, she had this like sort of curtain, like she was coming onto the stage. That was neat. How about her accent? That was interesting.
Yeah, it was definitely partly fueling my perception of her as a sort of stage persona thing.
Yeah, it's a weird sort of combination of flavors in that. There was almost like a Vegas presenter kind of thing, but then she also had her somewhat inconsistent British accent that was coming out. So that was really interesting. But the actress is British, so that makes sense.
I'm
not sure quite what she was going for.
Because even a lot of the time, the British idea of a showy presenter is still kind of an American stereotype.
Right.
So it may well have been the actor engaging that, but not hard enough to sort of completely override her own accent.
Right. Yeah. She's saying things like, the proper words to describe yours truly are. And then she's also, how are y'all doing tonight?
That's another thing I've seen presenters do, that they sort of jump between registers, or in this case more blatantly for accents, for what fits best what they're going to say. But they do it very smoothly.
Yeah.
And Sardonyx is definitely someone who can obviously jump from beat to beat to beat with little trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one watching who thinks, I wish I could come up with clever stuff to say that quickly.
Yeah. Well, yeah. She needs her own show stat.
They show a bunch of web extras tonight with Sardonyx.
Definitely. So I really liked their fusion dance a lot.
That was a good one.
That was a hot dance.
Yeah, I usually like the fusion dances, and this one did not disappoint.
Yeah.
And I could tell really that the climax, as it were, was going to be when she did the big throw and caught her, and that would be the actual fusing, the merge.
Right. She just tossed her up there, Garnet just throwing her around. It was very sort of tender, sort of intimate, the way that they did their dancing. It was like, I don't know. I remember with Sugilite's dance with Amethyst and Garnet, they also had some pretty sort of hot moves, but it didn't feel very intimate. It wasn't tender like that. It was very gentle. It was careful. Very interesting.
I guess these two are cutting loose a bit in intimacy terms.
Yeah. And of course, when Sardonyx unfused, there's this puff of smoke, and there they are in this like dip embrace.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because they are not romantically involved in the show, but they looked very close.
Yeah. Possibly not less close after this episode.
Yeah. Oh goodness. And that it makes me really sad for Pearl. I mean, I am sympathizing with Garnet almost entirely with this, but you can't help but feel like, wow, what a desperate thing to do. What an awful thing that she did that must have been motivated by a real depth of loneliness,
Yeah, well, the animators definitely did a good job of portraying Pearl as someone whose deep thing has just been unexpectedly revealed. The last thing she wanted to hear was anyone knowing that they knew what she'd been up to.
Oh, yeah. You mean at the end when they wanted Amethyst and Steven wanted her to confess what she did and all of her body language after that.
Yeah, and had this last bit of, what are you talking about? As if that's going to save anything at this point.
Right. Yeah. It's really just that was a really painful scene to watch. Oh,
no wonder we were talking about wanting Kleenex earlier.
I'll get to it eventually, I guess. But I was really impressed with the way that this episode had kind of a little mini arc for all four of those characters. You know what I mean? And throughout most of it, it kind of seemed like the emotional arc was surrounding Amethyst because she was the one feeling left out. And she was the one that sang a song about her feelings, which almost never happens. And, then there's this huge thing at the end that it's like, oh my God, there's this conflict between Garnet and Pearl now. And you kind of forget that it is really largely an Amethyst episode.
Yeah, well, Amethyst and Steven, they kind of get to watch the whole thing unfold. And it's Amethyst who drops the bomb about what's been going on later. And of course, she sings, and she's the only one who... defend might be too strong a word, but tries to explain why Pearl has done what she's doing and can acknowledge that she felt like Pearl, but obviously did not do what she did.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Because she understands why Pearl feels that way, but she would never cross that line, but Pearl did.
Yeah. And for all the impetuousness, she does understand why that's a line you don't cross. You don't just go around fusing under false pretenses just for your own kicks, basically.
Right. That, Amethyst's way of, I guess, trying to get her needs met or whatever is to make herself into someone that Garnet wanted to fuse with. It was a little misguided, I guess, but like, I'm gonna help catch Peridot, and then she'll think I'm cool again, and she'll want to fuse with me. She'll pick me. Yeah,
but none of which involved the level of deception and using someone else that Pearl did.
No, I mean, Amethyst wanted to prove herself because she was feeling like, this was a long time ago now, and there hasn't been any conversation about what the hell happened with Sugilite. Nobody brought it up. And then all of a sudden, Amethyst is hearing from Garnet that their relationship is benched. And she's clearly very hurt, especially since right after that, she has to watch Garnet choose Pearl, which means that she's the bad ingredient. Like, even though Garnet tried to kind of take responsibility for part of that by saying, oh, well, I can be brash, you can be reckless, we can get carried away. But then she turns right around and picks somebody else, and it's a smashing success and everyone enjoyed it. Yeah. And, that especially seeing that with Pearl kind of embodying everything that Amethyst does not, that, oh my gosh, Garnet likes that and she chooses that. And that's the safe person. That's the careful person. That's the person who gets her respect and her reward.
And there was no point trying to mitigate it by fusing Amethyst and Pearl, because this is just not a task that Opal's suited to.
Yeah, she's a giant woman, but probably not a job for a bow and arrow.
Yeah, and she's, at least from what I remember, she's not nearly as giant as Sugilite, and not even sure if she's as large as Sardonyx, so of course. Yeah,
she looks like she would fit in the house. Well, she stood up straight in the house, and I'm certain that Sardonyx could not stand up in the house.
Yeah, so it'd just be impractical to even try that. It just wouldn't do anything. But right. It's also with good practical reason that they don't roll out Sugilite first instance.
Right.
I mean, much as it hurts Amethyst's feelings, Garnet
Right.
is completely right because that was, as she says, a disaster.
Yeah, it's true that the person that you want to pick, if you want to have a lot of precision and control, it's obviously going to be Pearl. But, Amethyst definitely took it personally and she felt like really rejected. But, it was self-directed. It wasn't like she was walking around like if she wore a hat that she would take the hat and throw it on the ground and be like, hey, like, how dare she? I'm good enough. She wasn't angry like that. She was disappointed and hurt and wondering, what can I do to be the person that you would choose? Because she really, really respects Garnet. And I mean, so does Pearl. But, I guess it's just hard to watch somebody, if you're Amethyst, it's hard to watch someone like Pearl get the reward that you want. And she doesn't react aggressively to that choice because the same thing that makes Sardonyx so confident is the same thing that Amethyst actually respects about Garnet. So I like that callback though, that Garnet says, what we need now is to be careful, because before it was like, we don't need to be careful. We just need to be huge.
Yeah, and I did like that callback that they both simply referred to the hugeness.
Yeah, there were quite a few callbacks, bunch of parallels, although some of them were kind of not very nice, with Sardonyx kind of trolling Amethyst, where she's just like, oh, well, smash is the word someone else would do, and then just praises herself with thesaurus words. But, when she was done, there's this perfect ring of pillars around. It's just everything was a perfect show. And she flips to the ground. And she's like, call me if you need me again. Poof.
I do wonder how they got Sugilite to willingly dissociate this time, assuming she did.
I don't know. I could imagine that. I mean, Amethyst didn't want to fuse this time. She did consent to do it because she understood there was a job to be done. But it seemed like really neither of them wanted to do it. They just wanted to get this over with. Maybe that contributed.
Yeah, to carry them through before Sugilite could do a sort of full takeover like she did last time.
Yeah.
Because last time they did say that it was the length of time which was contributing to the problems.
That's true. That could have been it. I guess that would have been a whole second layer of awfulness to this episode that I don't know if I would have been emotionally prepared for that after seeing what Pearl did. Oh my gosh. So it was interesting how kind of mature Amethyst was at the end, where she was just like, she knew that she had to put an end to what was going on, but, also understood on some level why Pearl did what she did.
Pearl, you're the least well behaved even compared to Amethyst this week. You're not doing well.
Yeah. And I'm going to guess there was whatever is satisfying about fusion for Amethyst. She probably didn't get that out of this fusion this time. So maybe that's why they didn't stay together.
Yeah, well, it's probably, as you just noted, I could see it was deeply tainted by what had just happened.
Yeah.
And it certainly would have been a faux pas if Amethyst had gone, fusing straight after that when they were about to become Sugilite.
Right. It would have come across as cruel and out of touch. Yeah, I really want to talk about some Pearl and Garnet stuff, but before I do, I just want to say a couple things about Steven, because I mean, they did have each kind of their own little arc in this. Steven, I guess, the least of anyone because he was observing everything and reacting. But what I really liked about him this time is that he was kind of tuned into when Amethyst wasn't enjoying what was going on. He was enjoying watching Sardonyx, and then he sees Amethyst is off there singing, and he's like, oh, I should come up with a plan to help her, feel better. He's always such a good little boy.
Yeah. And the enjoyment of the giant woman smashing up the tower is just not right if his friend / sister / aunt / whatever is depressed because of it.
Right. I mean, he was super excited about it at the first time. And then the second time he realized that Amethyst wasn't very into it.
I imagine much of the audience, he's like, oh, cool, new fusion.
I know. He's literally out there chanting, fusion, 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 fusion. And that was cool that he got to meet her. And she's like, was I worth the wait? Of course I was.
I think you're a bit fourth wall permeable there, Sardonyx.
She is. Yeah. It was later noted by some of the creators that Sardonyx kind of as a manifestation and enhancement of what future vision is, so that Garnet fusions can break the fourth wall. And I didn't see any evidence of that with Sugilite, so I wonder what it would have been.
Yeah, but yeah, I can. She might not go full Deadpool, but I can roll with someone like Sardonyx being at least a little bit medium aware.
I mean, that is an understatement. She's pretty crazy. Oh, Sardonyx. Yeah.
Well, whenever I think of stuff like this, I'm reminded of the first bloke to play the Master in Doctor Who. He never actually broke the fourth wall per se, but he said that he played the role as if the character is the only one who knows he's in a Saturday evening tea time serial.
Huh.
So with a certain degree of awareness, but not flat out turning to the viewer stuff. So
Right.
and I can see Sardonyx on the same scale, if maybe a bit further along.
Yeah, I mean, she certainly didn't turn to the screen and say, like, and you folks at home too, right? Am I right?
And mind you, she might have been unaware of that because she's just like that.
Trying to think if there was anything else about Steven in this episode that I wanted to mention. I liked his floaty finger thing. That was cute.
I like when he showed Amethyst how to do it by pulling back her hair, which also reminded me of my briefly held theory that she actually didn't have a second eye, which I held for about one episode or something.
It's like, look, the miracle of binocular vision. She's just like, don't touch my
And also because that is how I used to pass the time when I was much, much younger, by doing that finger thing.
Yeah. I imagine you were not interrupted by a Peridot escape pod, though. So.
No, so, I just got very good at it.
Mm-hmm. I liked when he thought he saw her, but it was just a weird cactus.
I like how blatantly that cactus is shaped like her.
I know. I've seen some fan art where somebody drew Peridot like on the other side of that cactus, thinking that was close or something.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's hilarious. And I liked that he was really into his TV show while we were going on, like that he kept tuning in for Crying Breakfast Friends. And there was even that sort of foreshadowing there where he's watching it with Garnet and he's like, oh, Pear, I'd forgive her, wouldn't you? And she's like, Amethyst was not happy about Crying Breakfast Friends. He's like, it's a really good one. She doesn't care. Neither does Garnet.
I know it's sometimes a meta stand-in for Steven Universe, the show. So I guess that's the time that someone's tried to sell someone on the show and it just doesn't land. Right.
But at least he has a couple of gems there who will humor him and watch his show with him. Watch Food crying. Amethyst's reaction to the ice cream falling on the floor in the show. It's like, why don't they just eat the ice cream off the floor? Of course, they are food, so I'm kind of just confused about the whole premise.
Maybe that's why they're crying.
Yeah.
The only way they can live is to feed off their own kind. It's terror within.
That's why they're always crying, because they're cannibals.
Yeah, they don't want to be, but they have no choice.
Yeah. Well, we are organic creatures that eat other organic creatures, so I guess we should get off our high horse right now.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I definitely want to have some conversation about Pearl over here, but I guess we already touched on how I thought she must be really desperate and lonely to do that. But I was thinking, I feel like if she had asked Garnet to fuse with her for recreational purposes, she probably would have said yes.
I think that's all part of it.
Yeah.
That she's using Garnet and lying to her. And lying to her about something pretty significant too.
Well, top of not acknowledging, that this is something extremely sacred to Garnet because of her identity.
Well, exactly that. And in a broader terms, Peridot's plans can, have the possibility of severely affecting the whole planet if she does get through to Yellow Diamond, and if Yellow Diamond pays attention, depending on how true my guess about how significant Peridot comes in. But but either way, we've held that recontact with Homeworld is a bad thing, and that's entirely what the transmission is about. So
yes,
Pearl is manipulating Garnet's emotions, plain old lying to her, using her, and basically using a threat of obliterating the earth
Yeah.
as the excuse for some fun.
Yeah, there is that. I mean, Garnet did say something at the end about that Peridot is out there, and this is what Pearl is distracting us with. So, it's interesting that, we've come to understand that Pearl is very good at tinkering and building and things like that now. And she really used her strengths for that. But, that means there were probably some other things that she could have been doing to actually catch Peridot. But what I thought was really interesting, though, is that Sardonyx's way of breaking the communication hub was very different from the way that Sugilite did. Because the Sugilite's just smashy. And Sardonyx was neatly disassembling it so that it could very easily be put back together. And it's like, that's kind of interesting. So she knows how she left it.
Yeah. And of course, there's the risk that every time it was repaired, maybe that would be the time Peridot did get a message through, and Yellow Diamond or the Great Diamond Authority would be like, oh, that funny little planet, let's just send a fleet of handships to punch them into the sun.
Right. Oh. Yeah, it was kind of unclear as to whether it was dangerous the second and third times that it was rebuilt, because there was no transmission those second and third times. But I mean, it could have still been dangerous.
Yeah. Well, there was no transmission because, but we don't know what Peridot might have been up to. She might have gone, oh, it's been fixed, but my transmission isn't going. I'll switch it back on.
Right. Or send another one or do some other frequencies or something like that. Oh, Pearl's phrasing for how she described what she was doing. She said she wanted to share victories with Garnet. I thought that was interesting. And she just wanted the experience of accomplishing something with her. And, Garnet immediately says, those weren't victories.
You can't just make up something to win. You've given yourself a participation trophy there, Pearl.
Yeah. It's such a hard episode for me to watch. But, when it comes to Garnet, she clearly really enjoys her time as Sardonyx too. She had a good time too. And probably that's part of why it hurts a lot to find out that it was made up and Pearl was lying to her. Just, I don't know. It's heartbreaking to think about your oldest friend in the world that you've known so long could do that to you. It really is disturbing. So I don't know. It's cool watching her, like, after they unfused for the first time, after the first appearance of the Sardonyx, and they like danced around, and Garnet was kind of like hooting and hollering, which is very unlike her. She was spinning Pearl around and she was very happy. They had a good time.
Well, that was a genuine accomplishment, a genuine victory. Yeah. It's one of those moments you can't just recreate.
Yeah. And we got a really cool and interesting tidbit about the way like her future vision works, where she said, she's evading my future vision. No matter how many times I check, I can't see us finding Peridot. So, I mean, she's deliberately looking at futures, like, when are we going to find Peridot? Where are we going to find her? And she's not seeing what's really going on because she's only looking at that.
She can and does filter, and for whatever reason, it didn't occur to her, just, I don't know, broaden her scope if she can do such a thing.
And I imagine that she just, if any glimmers occurred to her about the real truth, that she would have dismissed them as so unlikely that she wouldn't follow those pathways. Because even if you have a type of vision that others don't, she still seems to have relatively ordinary decision-making skills. And she's like, nah, that won't happen. I'm not going to look at it.
Yeah, presumably if she sets her scope too broad, she gets everything, no matter how likely or unlikely. So she has to use her judgment in those cases.
Yeah. I don't know. If I was in her position, I don't think I ever would have thought my oldest friend in the world is tricking me into fusing just for fun. I don't know. Where did you figure out it was Pearl?
I think I slightly wondered if something was up when there wasn't a second signal. Mm-hmm. But I didn't think, it's Pearl. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't nailed it was Pearl until we actually saw that. But I did also once. We also saw the escape pod come in rather than simply seeing Peridot wander up. I was like, okay, this is a bit of an unreveal that we're seeing a Peridot thing, but not actually Peridot herself.
Right. Yeah. So, some people started to suspect it right when they saw that because they knew the crystal gems had that. So
Yes, I was something is up for a moment.
mhm.
Did I forget that it went missing again? Or I
Right.
suppose I wondered what the characters wondered. Did someone somehow steal it? But
Right.
I hadn't nailed that it was Pearl herself, but it did seem to be obfuscating that it was Peridot.
Yeah, I'm glad that it didn't seem like super apparent to you that it was like what the reveal was until you were supposed to see it. Because I mean, I really thought this episode was written really well, just especially with sort of misdirection where you're supposed to be focusing on how Amethyst feels and you're not thinking about the giant mess that is Pearl.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure some viewers got it right away, just because some will.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this was a good, just the amount of, for me at least, foreshadowing plus something's not quite right, but not spring. So I didn't get it all at once. I sort of gradually got there.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt rewarded by the surprise of it being Pearl, but also by the I'm right, something is wrong, even though I didn't know what. So that was a good combination for me, at least.
Yeah. But when you did see her, were you thinking like, okay, now I understand why, because I'm thinking like Amethyst?
Oh, yeah. Once it was Pearl,
Yeah.
okay, it's pretty obvious because of how much she enjoyed fusing
Right.
and how much she enjoyed fusing again, that this is
Yeah.
about building it up to smash it down again. That much was pretty apparent right away. And I don't think that was supposed to be a second surprise on top of it.
No, not unless you're Steven and he's like, why would she do that? Maybe she's trying to get us more channels. No. Yeah, it's still really awful to kind of hear her confess it in very gentle terms that she just was having a good time. And, that she says at the end of the first one, she goes, why don't we do that more often? And that was like sort of the seed planting right there. Oh, and I don't know, she commented that it had been a long time. So I don't know. I wonder how long.
Yeah.
Clearly it wasn't their first time.
Mm.
I haven't exactly been myself lately.
Fusion joke.
Fusion joke, yeah. That was adorable. So yeah, it's really hard to like when Garnet realized what was going on and she just suddenly got the whole picture. She just dropped Pearl right on her back. That was like I'm like, oh, now she's furious. Now she's red hot angry.
Yeah, we've cut through the demure exterior. This is serious. This means business.
Oh gosh, it's really sort of chilling to watch because I mean, Garnet is scary when she's angry. She's advancing toward Pearl. She's like, "You tricked me." She's like so furious, and then the next time that we see them at home, she's just like cooled down to this chilly, silent treatment. She's not even speaking to her.
Yeah, well, it's always a big deal when Garnet's emotions get all the way out.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Though I did find it interesting that most of what she said was not about how she felt. It was like statements of fact. Like, that's why I couldn't see us finding Peridot. You've been fixing the hub. You tricked me. That was like the most personal thing she said. And then she just went into the practical aspects of why this was bad. Like you Peridot's out there somewhere and Pearl's been distracting us with nothing, like pretending that it's more about the mission than about how she feels. And I feel like that was like misdirection, because she's Garnet. She doesn't want to talk about how much that hurts.
To bring it home. I also feel that's a way to bring it home to Pearl, what a big deal this thing is.
Right. Because this could have consequences and Garnet is supposed to be focusing on those, but she doesn't say anything about herself, like her emotional reaction to that, which that's, I think, the biggest aspect of this that kind of breaks my heart when I watch it. Because, I relate to Garnet a lot in that situation. So, just kind of having to put your big girl pants on and be like, well, it doesn't matter how I feel about this was bad, but let's focus on something where I don't have to talk to you about how I feel. Yeah, really kills me. In other news,
if Ruby were separate at that point, she'd probably be cutting loose.
I think so. And then I guess there's not really an arc with Peridot because we saw her a few minutes, but a few seconds, but she really wants to go home. She wants Yellow Diamond to pick me up, Mom.
Yeah, her arc is still out there, still screwed. Okay.
Still, nobody gives a crap. Oh my gosh, it's so funny.
My guess is about her rapidly becoming pretty solid.
Yeah. I liked how they set that up, that Steven checks with Connie real fast. Like, is this on your TV? And Connie says it's on her TV too. So they know that it must be being sent on like all these frequencies. That's pretty cool.
And if this were a longer show, we'd probably be cut over to some of the other locals, sort of trying to work out what's going on with their TVs and radios and things.
Yeah. Well, I would normally save this for the factoids section, but I will say that Ronaldo wrote about it on his blog.
I was wondering what he made of it.
Well, on his blog, he had a screen cap of, the Peridot footage. And he said, let's see, let me find where I wrote it down. He captioned it with, "Is anyone else seeing this? I was just in the middle of watching Mighty Monster Card Traders Shuffle Quest, and there was a bunch of static, and then this was on my TV! Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Judging by her greenish hue, I'd say she must be part of some eco-terrorist group. Most definitely a highly advanced android programmed to free animals from the zoo. Sounds like her mission has gone afoul, but she could still be dangerous. I implore any zookeepers who follow my blog to be on the lookout for this green android. Protect your rhesus monkeys and your tamarins and your pygmy marmosets, and above all, protect the koalas."
It must take effort for him to guess so wrongly sometimes.
Oh, Peridot definitely hates organic life other than the zoo animals, Ronaldo. So
it's that Star Wars quote of everything you just said was totally wrong.
Yeah. Although he did figure out that Peridot's pronoun was she, and that was about it. Let's see. Did you notice that Sugilite looked a little different? She was only on screen for a sec.
No, because at first I thought we were only going to see her in silhouette, so I was busy being slightly taken aback that we saw her properly at all.
Yeah, they did change her costume a little. So we had, let's see. Yeah, both of them had changed their outfits by the time we saw her again.
Yep, so that makes sense. I guess she wasn't drastically different, because even if she was so drastically different, then even being surprised, I probably would have noticed that.
Yeah, it's a huge, huge difference. But, if you sit there like a Steven Universe nerd, like some people might be, and start picking it apart, then you can figure out what's different and why. And it's not the jumping out at you kind of thing, but they did go along with the kind of consistency where they did that for Opal when her second appearance was after Pearl's costume changed, but Amethyst had not.
Yeah, and like I said, I thought she was just going to stay in silhouette to sort of demonstrate what a big deal she can be, and B, that she's not really part of this story.
Right. Well, they didn't get Nicki Minaj to come back and scream.
Well, wait! I have loads more probing questions to ask!
So one interesting kind of thing different between Sugilite and Sardonyx is that Sardonyx only had 4 eyes and Sugilite had 5. So I wondered if you thought like there might be any rhyme or reason for why they would have certain features duplicated, like eyes and arms and stuff. If you had any thoughts on that based on this.
I mean, I know it's been pretty irregular so far. Garnet, after all, she has 3 eyes, but only has the regular 4 limbs.
Yep.
And didn't Rainbow Quartz only have the 2 arms as well? Come to that?
Rainbow Quartz only has 2 arms and 4 eyes, yes.
Yeah. So I think I haven't sort of seen a rhyme or reason. I just kind of have been taking that something that shuffles into place. Maybe this is some internal part of the fusion as a being that gets at least some say in creating itself. Or, whatever force decides what a fusion will be.
Yeah.
Obviously isn't a strictly mathematical one, and just as emotional traits can be mixed up, emphasized, or tamped down, so can physical ones. I mean, we do again see that it does seem that Pearl's nose shape is a dominant trait, whatever shape you're assuming.
There we go. Yeah, Sardonyx definitely got that nose.
But yeah, I think arms almost seem to be random, because we've seen 2 arms, we've seen different size set of arms, we've seen same size set of arms. So yeah, I guess the design process, almost maybe the same design process that the people who design the characters in real life do. Just kind something what suits this fusion. And obviously there's some kind of force in story that guides that.
Mm-hmm.
Because even a first-time fusion must look like something, even if that's just decided in a few seconds of the first fusing.
Mm-hmm.
And that force goes, okay, it's going to have 4 arms, or this is only going to have 2 eyes, or 2 big eyes and 1 little one, or something like that. It's still fairly based on the raw components. I don't think we've seen, at least so far, anyone with more limbs than their parts.
Yeah, I think you're right. Even like Alexandrite, like if she has technically 4 gems in there, she should have 4 arms, but she should have 8 arms, but she has 6.
Yeah, and I mean, we've only seen, I guess the only 2 gem fusion that's not another fusion we've seen has been Opal. But Opal has 4 arms, not 6, so no one's getting extra limbs. No one's getting more than they came in with. Some things disappear, but as far as I can tell, nothing's getting added, at least in terms of body parts. They seem to add some raw size, but there's a whole other thing.
Yeah, we did have that one very strange kind of manifestation of the way that limbs work, with Malachite having 2 arms but 4 legs. So that's weird. That apparently can happen. Although those legs, like, they're not, I don't know, they look more like sea monster arms / legs.
Yeah, that was my thinking on those too, that they were kind of bit prehensile, like some primates have.
Yeah, looked like, I don't know, Loch Ness Monster or something. So it was interesting.
But again, still no more limbs than her component parts have.
Right, and none of them are walking around with like, okay, screw it, you just have a face full of eyes now.
Yeah, as you said, we've seen the 5 eyes and the 4, but no one's come up like a full insect head.
Maybe they just said, well, we don't know where we would put the 5th eye because of Pearl's pearl. So let's just give her 4.
Maybe it's stuck under the pearl. Who knows?
Yeah, well, she's got enough eyes without a 5th one. Plus, she wears glasses. So her glasses are cute.
Oh,
it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, her whole look works for her. Someone had fun making that.
Yeah, a weird little, her head looks like an onigiri or something. This little triangle shape. It's actually kind of similar to Peridot's. With that pale orange hair, and it doesn't look like hair. It doesn't look like it moves at all.
She seemed to merge into a more or less human skin color.
Right. Yeah, she's got kind of a brownish skin tone.
Yeah, she's got the skin color that would not cause a second glance on a human, whereas Pearl and Garnet can be close, except once you look for a bit, you see one's kind of creamish greenish and the other's kind of purplish.
Yeah, Garnet is a little magenta for a human skin tone.
Yeah, maybe she could pass for incredibly sunburnt.
Could be, but I think the strange number of eyes would get people's attention before the skin color. That and Garnet being like 7 feet tall. Forget Sardonyx.
Yes, I don't think Sardonyx is blending in. I think it's just a coincidence she happens to have a human skin color of all the myriad colors available to her.
Yeah, probably has something to do with the colors available on the actual stone. So.
Any requests?
We did have music.
For the first time in a while, we've had an actual song.
Yeah, an Amethyst song, her first solo.
Oh, was it? I'd wondered about that. But yeah, there are times she felt she should have had like a solo before, but here we are.
Yeah, she sang in On the Run. I think that was the first time she had like a featured song, but it was a duet with Steven.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to compare to.
Yeah, and she sang a little in Steven and the Stevens, and she sang in the theme song, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, Steven and the Crystal Gems, not Steven and the Stevens, because that was all Stevens.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the first time she got a song to herself, which I thought was very strange because it didn't have any drums in it. Like, there was no rhythm to it. So it was very atypical for Amethyst, for an Amethyst song.
And also poking beneath the outer layer of her character to her self-esteem issues.
Yeah, this was an interesting side of her. I mean, we've seen this side as part of her, but it was really interesting that there were no outbursts. She was not angry about it. She was sad and disappointed, and that was just, I don't know, gives her sort of more dimension. And that song had another callback, though. I forgot how great it felt to be us. Sugilite said almost exactly that. Forgot how great it feels to be me.
Yeah, this episode definitely is the better if you just happen to have watched Coach Steven a short time previously, which fortunately I have.
So what else? I mean, do you have anything else you want to talk about with that song?
I think that, I was going to agree. I think the reason we didn't get drums is because drums is usually part of outgoing fun Amethyst. And so this is stripping away that top layer. And maybe this particular issue is once she's hit her head against so many times that she's actually too exhausted on it to burst out.
Yeah. I guess she's had a while to cook on what happened between her and Garnet and didn't seem to be struggling with it until Garnet said something this time. And all of a sudden she finds out this is the dynamic that we have. This is how you're defining it. Oh my gosh, what have I done? Because I mean, again, like that Garnet tried to take some responsibility, but Amethyst didn't feel like that's what was said.
Yeah, but I do think on some level she did understand that there was a good reason not to unleash Sugilite again, and that might be why she went into sullen rather than outburst, because she sometimes does have enough awareness to consider reality over what she wants.
Yeah, definitely we got mature Amethyst this week. There were a couple. There went that bug again. That bug is trying to eat me and is succeeding. I had my door open for a while and now I'm paying the price. So there was another couple of like instrumental songs, which I mean, most notably the really interesting music that played behind Garnet and Pearl's dance.
As ever, yeah.
And incidentally, that was called Enticement. So there's a reason it came across so sort of what passed as for sexy. And then it kind of exploded into this bombastic Sardonyx theme music, which I believe was just called Sardonyx.
Okay.
So that was really cool. I loved the mixture there of Garnet's bass and Pearl's piano. Those things going together like that. Gorgeous.
I do like how they fuse the music, as it were, during the fusion dances.
It's very inventive. And just like the fusions themselves, it makes this new sound, But then when Sardonyx comes out, the tone of it really changed because that, leading up to it, the enticement piece was so, it was tender, kind of like their dance was. It was very, I don't know, especially the piano part there, just very delicate, very sort of beautiful. And then Sardonyx appears and all of a sudden we've got these jazz, like this piano run and stuff.
It all explodes, yeah.
Yeah, and the bass underneath it was the tempo was kept it moving really interestingly. It was, yeah, I love what they do. So that's what I have to say about music.
So not much food to speak of other than Amethyst, quote, having her head stuck in the fridge.
That's right. Despite this being a frequent mentioner of crying breakfast friends, there was no actual food, and I did not make crying breakfast friends because nobody ate them.
And Amethyst got interrupted before she could eat whatever she was going to eat in the fridge.
That's correct. I do remember that at this time, they still usually had the Steven Universe crew would have some kind of celebratory food when the episodes they worked on aired. And when this one came out, they had like a plate of pears with faces drawn on them, like guilty looking pears to look like the crying breakfast friends. So I seem to remember them having a crying pear and somebody like holding a knife up or something. And I'm like, oh God, this is like the worst. I've always hated when food has faces. I just really hate it.
It freaks me out too.
I hate it. I don't want them to be trying to avoid getting eaten. And I also don't want them to be trying to be eaten. I hate both of those things. So no food. Sorry, no recipes. We're crying for help. We're not crying for lunch.
I'm learning new things all the time.
I have some factoids.
Aha.
I gave you Ronaldo, but I do have a bunch of other things about this. I remember I mentioned last time that this was the beginning of another Steven bomb. So this is Steven Bomb 3, but the reason I didn't want to tell you what they were calling it was that they said, it's Steven Bomb 3, Week of Sardonyx. And I'm like, they just gave you the name of this character. So a lot of people theorized it was Pearl and Garnet's fusion because that was the new gem we're expecting to see someday. There were a lot of interesting oddball theories about who or what Sardonyx would be. And at the time I was in Canada and I remember I was texting with my friend, like, what do you think Sardonyx is? So we only had like a week before the next Steven bomb. And we were all like, what do we do with all this content?
And her name makes her sound a lot more grim than she actually is.
Yeah, because of how similar it sounds to the word sardonic. It's a gem. So yeah, they released kind of their week of Sardonyx, and then they drew kind of like a mysterious illustration on each day. And on this one, I think they just had a crying pair. So, and this was boarded by Jeff Flew and Joe Johnston. I was really surprised Rebecca was not on this one because there was much crying and there was a lot of drama.
Yeah, and she usually likes to get in on the big moment episodes too, being the boss of the show, basically.
Let's see, what did they say in the thing about how to describe it? It says Steven's favorite TV show gets interrupted by a magical disturbance. Okay, I love that they don't give you anything. So,
yeah, hints they're going to go check it out, but we don't know.
Yeah. Now, one thing that's also interesting about this episode is they spoiled Sardonyx's existence at Comic-Con before the airing. They showed it at San Diego Comic-Con. So they started it. I remember seeing this footage before the episode, so I knew what was coming, but I didn't know all the other stuff that was going to happen. And they showed it from where Garnet is just, they don't tell you why, but they just have Garnet saying, it's you and me, Pearl, let's fuse. And like the audience starts screaming and you can't even like hear what they say to each other. Everybody's freaking out. We're going to get to see her. And so you get to see the fusion dance, and then you get to see Sardonyx, and it ends with Steven going, giant woman. It's really cute.
Itself another callback, of course.
Yeah. Yes. So Sardonyx's voice is done by an actress named Alexia Kadim.
Okay, don't know that name, but
I didn't already know her ahead of time, but it turned out that when I looked her up, I found out she had done the title role in Wicked. Well, I guess you wouldn't call it the title role. The main character, Elphaba, she has sung that role in musicals, and she's like ridiculously good.
Well, it does fit to have someone with a theatre background to handle that character.
I mean, they just really did everything perfect. I remember some people speculating that because of the tuxedo and because of how queer the show is, they were like, did they get Janelle Monáe to do it or something? But
that wouldn't suck.
It was not her. I heard that from someone, and it turned out it was not true. It was just somebody guessing, and I didn't realize it was a guess. But then I found out the real voice actor. So I don't know what else she has done, but that's the main thing that I recognized her in.
Yeah, I just breezed her title list, and I don't she's part of an ensemble in Les Miserables, but
well, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I wouldn't have picked that because ensemble.
Right, yeah. And there was a note on her design, like she has a charming little tooth gap in the front, and one of the guys who worked on the episode, Joe Johnston, he said, I wanted her to have a tooth gap because I have a tooth gap. So he gave her his own tooth gap. I thought that was cute. So you don't do a lot of anime, right?
Not a lot of recent anime.
Right. I was wondering if you know about that Noble Woman's Laugh thing.
Oh, that I do know. Yes.
Yeah, that was
a veteran trope. So yes.
Right. It's pretty classic. But yeah, they often note that they gave Sardonyx that.
Yeah, my Japanese auntie can do that down pat. A little scary,
so
actually.
Funny. One of the factoids that I really enjoy is that the crying breakfast friends little drama there where a crying pair lied to Sad Spoon. They had Pearl doing the pair's voice and Estelle Dee Dee Magno-Hall doing the pair's voice and Estelle doing the Sad Spoon's voice. Why, Pear? Why did you lie to me? I didn't mean to. What?
How hard they want to foreshadow.
Oh my God. That's like one of my favorite little factoids about this.
That must have been fun.
I know, right? This is kind of a tangent, but the trading cards that they came out with after the original show had wrapped had a bunch of autograph cards from the voice actors, primarily voice actors. And sometimes if a voice actor had done more than one character in the show, they would have them sign voice actor autograph cards like so-and-so as this character and then so-and-so as this character. There's a few that have done a whole bunch of them, like D. Bradley Baker, who does a bunch of the monsters. So it's like you can get D. Bradley Baker as Frybo and D. Bradley Baker as Centipedal and, stuff like that. But Estelle doesn't do a lot of that. She doesn't do really anyone but Garnet pretty much ever. So seeing her as Sad Spoon was really funny. And they have an autograph card with Estelle as Sad Spoon.
Oh, cool.
And that made me laugh so hard because it just didn't have any other ones. She never does it. It's so cute. I love it. I think that's all I have for factoids. I'll probably think of something else later and be like, how did I forget to say that? But that's all I remember right now.
Yeah, well, that's me on the other show I do. I get down to editing and go, oh, why didn't I mention this here? And I spent all this time researching that. Why didn't I bring that up?
Go check out our merch table.
I do have merchandise for you, though, of course.
Let's see it.
Like the last couple of times, I'm kind of doubling up if I have multiple things that fit. But you may have seen little peeks of my Crying Breakfast Friends shirt.
Yes, I saw the yellow butter thing keep popping up into camera. If that's indeed butter.
I may have worn this in previous episodes, but I don't really remember if I did. But it was appropriate for this time, and it's official. Crying Breakfast Friend.
Awesome.
There's Crying Pear. Spoon is not there, I don't think.
We got the waffles, the milk, and what was the other one?
There's an apple, I think.
Apple.
And milk. Why isn't the butter crying?
Maybe the butter isn't sapient butter?
Yeah.
I don't know how it works.
Maybe it's one of the ones that's crying. It's got the quotes around it. Why is it quotes? Anyway, the choice that I made for the other stuff that I want to show you is kind of weird. I wasn't sure when I was going to show you this set of plushies I have, but I have a really cute set of plushies that are called keychain plushes.
Oh, that is
so
cute.
Here's a Garnet, and there are 6 of them in the set. So next we have Cookie Cat. So Garnet and Cookie Cat. Look at this squishy guy.
It's cute.
Yeah. And we have Lion.
Oh, Lion, you're adorables.
Look at how cute he is with his heart nose. Oh, here's Pearl. Ta-da.
Hey, Pearl.
You've got a hair on you, Pearl. So, and she's got a nose. So she's cute. That's
She
4.
looks weird front on, but that's Pearl's lot in life.
That's true. And a Steven.
Yeah.
A smiling Steven. And then number 6 is another Steven. There is no Amethyst in this set. She got left out. And that's why I picked it for this, because she kept getting left out.
Okay, clever.
And it really bothers me that there's no Amethyst in this set. It seems like a very strange decision.
Especially
right?
to go, let's have 2 Stevens and a Cookie Cat, but
2
not...
Stevens and a Cookie Cat, but no other main character. So I was like, did people who did this merchandising just not really know what the show is or something? And I don't know. But I thought that was really strange. And this was labeled like plush set 1. I was like, okay, she better be in set 2. And set 2 never came out. I did see a toy fair where they were showing the designs of the next set. And it did have Amethyst. I think it had another Steven. And then it had Peridot and Lapis. And I think Rose Quartz. And then they did something even worse than leaving Amethyst out. They had Ruby and no Sapphire.
Oh.
So I'm just thinking, what is going on? So, but they never did make that. But I did see the pictures. I know it existed at a toy fair, at least. It just never got merchandised out. I do have one other merch item, and that is another plushie, and it's Lion.
Oh.
But this is called Night Lion. He's sort of darker purple.
Yeah.
And they said this is Lion in his night palette. It's a very strange choice.
Yeah, I mean, at first I thought you had actually held him into shadow, so that's a good choice of color for that. But
like next to a pink lion.
Yeah.
And I have like 2 other ones that are this size, one that's sitting, one that's standing, but it's supposed to be this color, and this is the night palette. And some people were like, well, is it Amethyst shapeshifted as Lion? No gem. Plus it says Night Lion.
It's a very specific thing to issue merchandise of.
Yes, I can't figure it out. I mean, it seems very, very strange. It would have made more sense in story to just put a gem on it and say this is Lion, Amethyst as Lion. But Lion was in his night palette for the visits to the hub this time. So I decided to show you Night Lion. This was a San Diego Comic-Con 2018 exclusive, and only 2,000 of them were made. So I got number 988. And it's cute and cuddly and big.
It's very adorable, odd choice of color aside.
Whoop. So there's my lion, and I'm done crying. Yep, that's all my merch. All right. What else? Any closing thoughts about how we cried and loved and lost today?
I'm glad that it appears at least it's going to hold over for a bit, that this wasn't everyone learned an important lesson today episode, which this show tends not to do, of course, but
Yes. If only it could be like in cartoons. But this is a different cartoon.
so yeah,
Yep.
the title of the Stephen bomb suggests that, well, I guess this is probably going to be the theme of it.
Yeah. Week of Sardonyx. So we'll have to see how that plays out as we go into the next episode, which is called Keystone Motel. So I guess we'll explore our thoughts on that title when we come to that episode. Are you ready to wrap this one up?
I'm ready to wrap it.
Okay. Well, I'll thank our listeners for listening to us, and I hope that y'all didn't cry too much.
Yes, I hope you didn't all end up like Sad Spoon and Crying Pear. And
Yes, and that if you had a breakfast, it was not crying also. That would be bad.
yeah. They don't seem to have a bagel on their show. I had a bagel for breakfast, but they didn't have a bagel on their breakfast show.
Oh, well, there were bagels in episode 3, but he threw them at Crystal Shrimp.
Not sapient crying bagels.
Oh, no sapient crying bagels as such. I think the closest we got was the sad waffle. I don't think we've ever seen pining grapefruit, which was only mentioned by Steven.
No. I don't think we've seen that, at least that I recall.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. You've been listening to Ivy and Daria on Not So Giant Women.
You can find episodes of the show in video form by looking up Not So Giant Women on YouTube,
or in audio form at anchor.fm/NotSoGiantWomen or your podcatcher of choice.
You can also find us on Facebook. Audio production by Daria.
Video production and music by Ivy.
Daria can also be heard on Podsploitation, the Ozploitation podcast,
and Ivy at her Steven Universe fan blog at love-takes-work.tumblr.com.
Steven Universe was created by Rebecca Sugar and remains property of Cartoon Network.
No infringement is intended. You've been listening to Ivy and Daria on Not So Giant Women.
You can find episodes of the show in video form by looking up Not So Giant Women on YouTube,
or in audio form at anchor.fm/NotSoGiantWomen or your podcatcher of choice.
You can also find us on Facebook. Audio production by Daria.
Video production and music by Ivy.
Daria can also be heard on Podsploitation, the Ozploitation podcast,
and Ivy at her Steven Universe fan blog at love-takes-work.tumblr.com.
Steven Universe was created by Rebecca Sugar and remains property of Cartoon Network.
No infringement is intended.